Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Daugherty, joined by Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show's Week 1, or maybe is it Week 2 Waiver Wire Show? We never know what naming convention to use for this. It is the Waiver Wire Show coming after Week 1, in advance of Week 2, and just a lot of big names to get to. Not as many as usual, Kyle. Thankfully, knock on wood, at least so far, pretty quiet Week 1 on the injury front. But a lot of names people are going to be wondering about. Harold Fannin, someone I know you want to talk about. People will be asking about. They're going to be wondering what's going on in the Browns backfield. They're going to be wondering, is Trey Benson for real? Keenan Allen, Hollywood Brown, Kayshon Boutte, back-to-back 100-yard games. All players we know that you're going to have questions about. But as we wait for some of them to come in, we will ask you right off the jump, who is the top waiver wire ad of the week, and why is it, as you already told me, Mr. Harold Fannin Jr., third-round pick of the Cleveland Browns?
It is indeed Harold Fannin, third-round pick, tight end of the Cleveland Browns. I will admit, in part, because, like you said, it's a relatively weak waiver wire week. We don't have the clear backup running back getting the starting role. There's not a breakout quarterback per se. There's some fun quarterback scores, but no one we think is the breakout guy. But there is a clear breakout at tight end, and it's the de facto slot receiver, queen chess piece of the Cleveland Browns, who happens to have tight end eligibility, who went out and tied actually with Tyler Warren, the record for catches by a rookie tight end in their first game ever, who led the Browns, I believe, 10 or 9 targets. Like, he is doing it all. The team is making it a point to get him the ball, and he looks great while doing it. They're not just force-feeding a guy and he's doing nothing once he gets the ball. He looks like the truth, and we kind of should have expected this. He was literally the most productive tight end in college football history, and it's not even close. 1,500 yards, I believe 117 catches, was also used as a running back in college, like, the H-back type. And we saw him get a wildcat snap and fullback snaps, slot snaps, wide snaps. They want to make him the entirety of their offense, if at all possible. And it looks like he has the talent to make that happen.
Well, not beating the H-back allegations, apparently, for Harold
Didn't
Fannin.
need to. Let's go.
I do think you're going a little bit overboard, but 2 data points that you really just cannot, 3 data points you cannot lose sight of.
4. Okay, 5. There are 5 really.
The extreme college production, of course. The third-round draft capital, like, he's kind of getting out there, but he was a top 70 pick. If you're a top 70 pick skilled player, you are expected to play as a rookie. And then, of course, leading the team in week 1 targets. Like, maybe this is a bit of an aberration. Maybe the Bengals were caught off guard, not expecting Harold Fannin to be such a focal point. I mean, David Njoku is still there. Who knows what they're going to do with 12 or 11 personnel? Like, one game, blah, 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 all that. You don't lead the team in targets the literal first game of your career if there's not something going on there. He's a must-add, obviously, across the board. Bit of a concern in that who knows how long Joe Flacco is going to be the quarterback. The Browns played reasonably well yesterday and still lost in horrifying fashion to a Bengals team that was just atrocious and won 17-16. Just a reminder, this is not a good team, but I think it's fair to say you can quibble with just how elite of an ad or whatever is Harold Fannin Jr., but you can't quibble with he must be added. Like, he needs to be rostered across the board in 12-team leagues. You can't ignore reality, and the reality is that he led this team in targets in week 1. I'm sure we'll be getting more questions on Harold Fannin as we go. But we'll start here. We got a lot coming in already. Any cause for concern with Bo Nix? One game, Kyle, a pretty bad game, though. Not a lot going on in Titans-Broncos yesterday. Bo Nix, I could never decide if he was underhyped, overhyped this summer. Really, really gruesome box score from week 1, though. Are you concerned? Any reason for concern after one game?
I mean, yeah, he didn't look great, and I think maybe that's to be expected given that they have a pretty, they're trying out a lot of different stuff at wide receiver right now. Last year, they had Devon Bailey, who seemed like he ended up being the rookie, quote, breakout, and they ended up trading him away. Now they're trying to get guys like Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin involved. Then they bring in Evan Ingram, and then Evan Ingram gets hurt. So it was a very mixed up game from a team entering its second year. But I wouldn't say he was elite as a rookie. He basically did what was asked of him and then some. Early in the year, he was really shaky as a passer, and he really leaned on his legs to survive games. Then in the second half of the season, he almost flipped the script entirely. He looked really confident as a passer and completely, I don't want to say gave up. He just didn't need to use his legs. So maybe the sort of bright side of that is if he continues to struggle or just not live up to expectations as a passer, he really is a talented runner. He's obviously not an elite runner, but he's a guy who can do that like Daniel Jones, 500 or 600 yards, if that is what is required of him. And part of that might be that if he doesn't pass as well as we want, he'll at least be required to make plays with his legs. So there's some floor there. But I do think the fact that he wasn't elite as a rookie and then comes out and struggles in week one, my ears are perked up for maybe there is some second-year regression, a little bit of defenses figuring stuff out with Bo Nix that we have to look out for.
Yeah, just a reminder that the defenses are going to throw new stuff at him. Not that they weren't doing that last year as he went as a rookie. But yeah, it was never going to be smooth sailing, I guess. And potentially good matchup this week in the Colts. The Colts made the Dolphins look like they all wanted to go into retirement, but I don't think this is really a stay away defense. In the Indianapolis Colts, it is on the road. We'll see. We need to see some sort of bounce back, I would say, from Bo Nix in week 2. If he stacks back-to-back pretty shaky performances, maybe getting a little concerned. Then real quick, Joseph Garcia, he's wondering about adding tight ends. He's asking about Harold Fannin. He's asking about Zach Ertz, Jonnu Smith. I mean, you're considering like the only tight end over anyone else, Harold Fannin this week, come hell or high water base for you. Brenton Strange is also available. Chig Okonkwo. Are you adding Harold Fannin over all these guys, Kyle?
Yeah, it's not even close. Like he was, I mean, it's like what we saw with Brock Bowers.
Brenton Strange was schemed up 3 targets on the opening series for the Jags yesterday.
Oh my God, 3 whole targets. He was schemed up 3 targets and a wildcat snap on the opening drive for the Browns. Harold Fannin, he's actually good. True. It's like what we saw, a smaller degree. But
David Njoku does still exist. I will have to remind you of this.
Harold Fannon's not a tight end. Like it doesn't matter.
So he admitted he's an H-back.
Truly doesn't matter what position you play. It's like he does not play traditional tight end. He absolutely does not. And in this setup, that is what is required. If he was playing traditional tight end, it would be very bad for him. Because you're right, David Njoku is legit a good tight end. He ran almost all the routes, as many routes as you expect any starting tight end to play. He is just their starting slot receiver. Plus, if they're not using a slot receiver, H-back. Plus, if they need an out wide receiver, he can do that. They draw up scheme targets, wildcat snaps for him. Like, I agree. He's not even a non-traditional tight end. He's like really just not much of a tight end. They did actually use him in blocking situations as well, which is good. They didn't sub him out when I would say they didn't need to, and they didn't do that. But he's just an extra slot receiver for a team that has 2 like wide receiver 2/3s. We mentioned this on, it was probably a Thursday show maybe, or maybe it was last night even, that like Jerry Jeudy's a fine wide receiver. Like, do I think he should be a team's number 1 receiver, especially a team that is going to flow through the pass? Probably not. And Cedric Tillman's like a good, potentially Z number 2 receiver, but I think he's probably best slotted in as number 3. All that leaves them with needing to funnel targets, spreading them out to guys deeper on the depth chart, like Harold Fannin, who is technically the backup tight end, but is just a superstar talent coming out of college and is proving that to be true in his very first game. The actual number 2 tight end I have written up in the waiver wire column, which should be out right now, is Juwan Johnson. He literally ran almost every single route. I believe 51 of 53 and saw 10 targets, 10 or 11. He's actually the one who led all tight ends in targets this week, Monday Night Football pending. He's the number 2 ad for me. He's just an every down tight end on a team that's going to have to pass a lot. And yeah, he's not the most flashy tight end, but again, every down, tons of targets on a team that, as not good as they are, throwing the football a lot.
I saw Saints fans very upset that he dropped a touchdown. In fact, I saw a montage of angry Saints fans calling into a show to talk about. I would say Brenton Strange is my second number 2 tight end of the week. Tony Louie, he wants to establish the line on Harold Fannin, percent of his fab budget. I was going to say 22%. It frankly sounds very high to me. I know you're excited, but I don't know if I'm really emptying the clip for a week 1 H-back. I don't really know. But what percent of your fab budget?
Slot receiver. Just call him a week 1 slot receiver and you'll feel a little better. But I wasn't going to be that much higher than you. I thought 30 or 35. I do think it's truly
that has to be saved for a running. I just think there's no traditional right way to do this. I think if you're really unloading the fab, it needs to be for like a touch monster. It really, really does, in my opinion.
He had the second most targets for a tight end in week 1. Like, as far as tight ends go, that's a touch monster. And a carry.
It's true. You're excited about Harold Fannin. We're all probably going to be excited about Harold Fannin.
I said 30%, so I'm not that much higher than you, especially in like non-tight end premium. And tight end premium, I do think you unload the clip. He is the ad of the year, right? It's like, imagine if you got a crack at a Brock Bowers type bet last year off the waiver wire. You just unload everything on it. In non-tight end premium, where you're not valuing the fact that Harold Fannin specifically is going to be catching a ton of passes. I don't think the Browns are going to score a ton of touchdowns this year, obviously. So if you're looking at half PPR, standard, even full PPR, yeah, he's probably not going to win you your league. He's going to be a really strong bet, but there might be a running back out there that wins your league. I still think that merits like 30% fab in non-tight end premium. And tight end premium, just spend it all.
I'm going to say 22%, but we're not quibbling actually that much. Who's the top waiver wire ad of the week at wide receiver, Kyle? Asking about Cedric Tillman, Hollywood Brown, some other guys under 50% rostered on Yahoo, Keenan Allen, Kayshon Boutte, Josh Palmer, Luther Burden, who we have not seen play yet, Quentin Johnston, Alec Ayuman, things of that nature. Who would you call the top wide receiver ad of week 2?
I mean, it's not fun, but it's Hollywood Brown. He just saw 16 targets. Like,
it's clearly Hollywood Brown. It's
not fun. He saw 16 targets. That is the entire thesis of the play. And I mean, like, one, I don't think Xavier Worthy's playing anytime soon. Like, dude, just Travis Kelce outweighs him by 100 pounds and ran through him at full force. I think I hope he'll be back sooner rather than later, but it does not seem like something he's coming back from next week, obviously, but probably not the week after that. Maybe you're looking at 3 or 4 weeks as sort of an optimistic projection. At that point, Rashee Rice is coming back anyways. You're probably looking at, until Rashee Rice comes back, Hollywood Brown is this team's number 1 receiver, and they have no other choice than to throw to him a whole hell of a lot. You would think they would have a choice in Travis Kelce. Kelce just could not get open that last night. It was like 3 nights ago at this point. 4 targets in a game where they needed a number 1 or a number 2 or a number 3 receiver, and he couldn't be any of those. Juju out-targeted him 5-4, I believe. Like, I think just de facto Hollywood Brown, team's number 1 receiver, Patrick Mahomes' number 1 receiver, let alone, like, that has to be the top waiver priority.
It just does, for every reason you laid out. And Hollywood Brown, I mean, his thing is getting hurt. So we'll see what happens there, but he's healthy now. The targets, even last year when they were easing him in, he had some like eyebrow-raising target shares. You just gotta add Hollywood Brown. You might not like it. This is a peak wide receiver waiver wire performance looks like. Stevie Janowski, not his real name, friend of the show. He's wondering why the Texans cannot figure out the offensive line. I would like to know. And are Nick Chubb, Jaden Higgins, Dalton Schultz unstartable for now? Some of these guys you're probably getting. We'll start with Nick Chubb. He's starting Nick Chubb in 12-team leagues right now, Kyle. He did easily lead the backfield of what was a very, very bad Texans offense on Sunday.
I was texting you about this, so it's not news to you, but we were talking about this in our private text, that of any team that needed to not have fun in the draft and just draft linemen, it was very, very, very clearly the Houston Texans. Like, the whole problem last year was that the line collapsed and exposed the sort of fatal flaw that CJ Stroud had coming out of college too. That was the one thing that I think a lot of the Bryce Young stands held over CJ Stroud, is Bryce Young was like creative and handled pressure well. And CJ Stroud, for as athletic as he is relatively a statue. Like, that's his style of play. It can get him into trouble when he's under pressure. That wasn't as big of an issue as a rookie, and it was a massive issue last year. And what do they do in the draft? They just go out and they spend on wide receivers. And I had fun watching the draft, but I think like they didn't even try. Their offensive line got meaningfully worse talent-wise by trading Laramie Tunsil, like the only good member of this offensive line. And then they go out and suffer injuries in week 1 as well. Who do you start? Like you said, there's a running back that is seeing the majority of his team's carries. Not every team needs to start that player. I have some 0 RB teams that need to start that player. So it is context dependent, but Chubb is startable. Hopefully you don't need to start him. Outside of that, probably not startable for Jaden Higgins and definitely not for Dalton Schultz.
Well, I'll just say like Nick Chubb is what you'd call basically a gentleman's flex at this point, where he's not pushing at all for RB2 value because there's not going to be enough touchdowns. He's not catching any passes. You don't ever feel great about plugging him into your flex, but it's not an embarrassing flex play. Even this time of year, Jaden Higgins, yeah, I mean, you just need to wait on that one. Like, you just have to wait. Like right now, we haven't seen anything suggest he's startable. Dalton Schultz, I do feel like has kind of been an obvious under the radar bounce back guy this year, but I don't know, man, this offense looked that dysfunctional yesterday. I mean, the same problems that plagued it last year. Tight end is as deep as it's really been in a long time, where Dalton Schultz to me in a vacuum feels like he's worth an end of roster spot. But I think if you're scanning through the waiver wire, there's probably still 5 or 6 tight ends you'd rather add. So yeah, I might call him unstartable for now. Someone everyone is going to be wondering about this week. Caleb Johnson, negative drum beat began midway through Steelers training camp. It carried over heavily into week 1. He played only 2 snaps. Listen, coaches have a way of doing really weird things with rookies in week 1, where sometimes a guy's a healthy scratch and then comes back and like leads the backfield the next week. Like something could happen, frankly, with like Jaden Blue this week.
That was my thought too. Yeah,
things just happen with these rookies. Kenneth Gainwell, shockingly, was not good. Jalen Warren, shockingly, is just mediocre yesterday.
Yeah.
I think Caleb Johnson is going to play more than 2 snaps in week 2. But man, the rookie played 2 snaps, and it's already time to make hard roster decisions. Are we telling people to drop or hold on to Caleb Johnson, Kyle?
Yeah, I think because this is a waiver wire week that is pretty weak, fittingly, especially at running back. If you're dropping Caleb Johnson, who is it for? Is it still clearly a backup and not startable Trey Benson? Like, I had Kareem Hunt written up because he got all the high value snaps. He was the third down back and the goal line back. But like, they throw at the goal line, and Kareem Hunt's not a good pass catcher. He's out there to block and draw attention away from Patrick Mahomes. So as much as the role sounds good, it's not that good of a bet. There's really just no one except, I would say, Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson's out there. He's clearly, I would roster him over Caleb Johnson. I don't know if
even Sampson, it's like, I mean, Quinshon Judkins is
yes, no, it's not a great bet either. He looked good as a pass catcher. He led the NFL in yards per route run among running backs with at least 10 routes. But as a runner, there just was nothing going for him. I don't really think it was his fault. He's kind of got bottled up. But who's to say he won't keep getting bottled up? He's probably just an exciting pass catching change of pace back without much clear contingency value because he doubled up Jerome Ford in carries, but they also gave Rocket Sanders 3 carries, short yardage, goal, like a touchdown. So at best, you're getting like it's not going to stay like it is this week. It's just not. Maybe Quinshon goes out and gets hurt or they suspend him, but you're getting a chunk of the carries and good catches. The contingency value just isn't elite. The base roll actually is maybe better than I was expecting, frankly, with all of those catches, 8 catches, but it doesn't make him a guy you want to spend a ton of fab on. With that being said, to circle back to the question, you are rostering him over Caleb Johnson. That's not close to me.
You're definitely rostering Dylan Sampson over Caleb Johnson. But Caleb, I would just one more week, especially since there aren't many killer apps out there at running back. I think you have to give him the weird stuff happens in week 1, benefit of the doubt. Week 1 is so often a red herring week, and be prepared to drop him after week 2. So you could say, like, well, if I'm going to drop him week 2, why not just drop him now? I do think you just need to give it one more week. He's a 3rd-round pick. No one exactly took the bull by the horns in the Steelers backfield on Sunday. I'd give Caleb Johnson one more pick. Kayshon Boutte. So Kevin, lost worthy, needs a wide receiver. He's wondering about claiming Kayshon Boutte or Quentin Johnston off waivers. To me, the Quentin Johnston game feels like an ultimate, like Kevin Ogletree all-star game. Google it if you don't remember. Kevin Ogletree had one of the more infamous week 1 blow-up spots in fantasy football history, then proceeded to do nothing. Quentin Johnston has a little bit longer track record. He's going to clearly be hanging around. It's like a wide receiver 4 nuisance. But Kyle, Kayshon Boutte, back-to-back 100-yard games, if you include last week 18. That spans, of course, 2 seasons, 2 coaching staffs, even 2 quarterbacks, because Drake May did not really play last week 18. Right, yeah. In between, the Athletics said he had a stunning, quote-unquote, offseason transformation. He led the Patriots in snaps, routes, targets. What are we telling people about Kayshon Boutte? I feel like you basically have to consider him a wide receiver 3 for week 2 against the Dolphins. But how much of a quote-unquote must-add is Kayshon Boutte ahead of week 2?
I think maybe the one concern I'm going to end up having is that Stephon Diggs didn't play a full-time role, and maybe we see more of someone like Kyle Williams going forward. And at that point, Kayshon Boutte's route rate, which is, I think, frankly, like the biggest selling point, right? See, you tied for a team high in route or in targets with Hunter Henry, but if his routes drop, he's not a massive, like, he's not a guy who you can play 60% of the routes and be like, he's still going to get there. He doesn't have that like Marvin Mims level of dynamism where even if they scale his rollback, I'm excited to maybe get some spike weeks. The selling point right now is that he runs deep, he runs all the routes, and he earns some targets on those, and they're high value targets. When he hits on them, like he did last week, he goes for over 100 yards. I don't think his role is incredibly secure given what else they have on the roster. I mean, I think it's clearly just, does Diggs play more? He didn't run a full complement of routes. But that being said, like, interesting prospect who has just slowly worked his way up the depth chart, up the pecking order in targets. Like you said, he has a good offseason. I think he should be added in most leagues. I'm probably not quite there as a wide receiver 3 yet, but he should be rostered in every single league. I think I would take QJ over him, but it's close. Like you brought me a lot closer. You kind of sold me on Boutte a little bit.
I think I would take Boutte over, I can't ever say this guy's last name, over Quentin Johnston, just because, I mean, are we really getting like another step forward from Quentin Johnston this year? I just feel like he totally maxes out as like a wide receiver role player in fantasy, which is valuable. Do you really see him becoming a weekly wide receiver 2 or 3, or there's just still enough of that unknown upside with Kayshon that to me, he feels like a you throw out a 7 to 9% bid on Kayshawn, and if you don't win it, you're not too heartbroken. If you do win it, you can maybe be cautiously optimistic, is what I would say about Kayshawn Boutte. Tyler Sperry is wondering about Keon Coleman, someone who is not on a lot of waiver wires. He's probably rostered in, I think, 70 to 75% of leagues, but he's definitely a must-add if he's out there. But the greater question, Kyle, is just how much this was for real with Keon Coleman, who he kind of became a positive drumbeat guy near the end of training camp, where he appeared to be a focal point. Joe Buscaglia, the dean of the Bills press corps, was saying he was going to basically lead the team and everything. It required some really wonky game script and like turbo comeback mode, but 8 of 11 for 112 yards and a pretty fluky, kind of freaky touchdown against the Ravens. There's a chance that's Keon Coleman's best game of the season, but it's week 1. You love to see that in week 1. What are we considering Keon Coleman as in fantasy right now? Is he already like a set and forget wide receiver 3, or is that too optimistic after one game?
Yeah, I think sort of the operative point in terms of what he literally did last night, right? That was last night, was that was, as like most Ravens versus other good teams are, game of the century stuff. Like obviously just an incredible game and set up super well for Josh Allen, the passing attack, to absolutely go off. He takes advantage of it and he earns, I believe, a team high in targets as well, runs a normal complement of routes, and they end up kind of just giving up on the 2 tight end dream. They barely ran 2 tight end in their passing plays. It does seem like we're in for a good role for him. And if he's available on your waiver wire, he is a former nearly first round pick. He's picked 33 technically. It's the spot they traded out with the Panthers to get Leggett for. He's a 33rd pick. He's basically a first round pick who goes out in his rookie year and is at least modestly efficient. In the regular season, he's 1.7 yards per route run. For a rookie, I know it's a part-time role. That's like perfectly fine. Like he was in the regular season, he kind of tailed off in the postseason. He lost all of his momentum and just couldn't find a spot. But in the regular season, in terms of efficiency on a per route basis, that's like Marvin Harrison Jr. numbers. To say it's fine. And if a rookie is just fine and a team spent a lot on him and they hype him up in the offseason, that's a player that I broadly want to be on board with. So if he is out there for you, I do think he would almost certainly be the top ad, because he's a guy who, as much as I didn't love him as a prospect, guys who I don't love as prospects break out all the time. And you should be cognizant of that the error margin on guys, whether you like them or not, who we just don't have a lot of data on, is really wide. And sometimes that means they have a really high ceiling. So if Coleman's out there for you, I think he's almost the clear top ad at wide receiver, just because he could be really good. Like young guys who produce can be really good.
Yeah, he's a must add if you're in one of the leagues where he slipped through the cracks. Because again, he's probably rostered in 70 to 75% of leagues. And I would say I'm going to rank him as a wide receiver 3 this week. I just don't really know how you couldn't at this point.
Do the Bills play this week?
I do actually not remember that, but he's it doesn't matter who they're playing. The drum beat has been there. They need him so bad. He did make the plays. Keon Coleman is going to be wide, unless they're playing like the 2000 Ravens this week.
Well, I was going to say, on the other hand, if they're playing the Dolphins, they're just going to run 60 times. Like you'll be seeing Ray Davis.
They're not playing the Dolphins. I know that the Dolphins are playing the Patriots, but I feel you have to feel good about Keon Coleman. Spoiler alert! What a surprise! I'm feeling good after the guy had a big game. But Cris, by the way, this is not a question. He's telling us if Tyler Shuck, I had to fact check this. It is true.
This is true, yeah.
If Tyler Shuck takes over at any point for the Saints this season, he was somehow Juwan Johnson's college quarterback. Juwan Johnson was 29 years old, by the way.
He is wide receiver Juwan Johnson's college quarterback. Juwan Johnson switched positions when they played together at Oregon. I believe he switched to tight end at Penn State, one of the many great tight ends from Penn State. So that's wide receiver Juwan Johnson to you. I mean, it certainly helps. I mean, I don't think you need that kind of juice because he literally just led the league in targets at his position, but like, that's fun.
That would be interesting. Speaking of Penn State tight end, we're going to answer a question about that in just a second. For now, Chase Austin, a lot of people are probably wondering, thoughts on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, 10 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown, Kyle. Played only 33% of the snaps. Now, the usage wasn't amazing, but, I mean, the votes of confidence keep coming. They traded Brian Robinson. They scratched Chris Rodriguez yesterday. He's clearly like the number one guy on early downs. Jeremy McNichols is involved, though. Austin Eckler is like the 2-minute drill guy. He's the passing down back. Maybe Krosky-Merritt's ceiling is kind of hard capped, but this is a relatively nice floor. Are we calling Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt a gentleman's flex as someone in the RB3 range who's not going to catch any passes?
Yeah, he's kind of the reverse of Nick Chubb in that, like, you have to call him a flex but not because of the fact that he's going to lead his team in carries and it's ugly, because he might not lead his team in carries, certainly won't lead his backfield in touches because he doesn't catch passes, but he's really good. I believe week 1, he was number 2 in the NFL in rush yards over expected per carry. Obviously hits a long one. That's going to help, but like, that was kind of his profile coming out of college too. 2 years ago, he didn't play football at all last year, I believe, at New Mexico, if I remember correctly. He was really strong in just all of the rushing metrics. He was really strong in yards after contact, missed tackles forced, and breakaway rate. It was a small school, right? But it looked like he could be that type of dynamic. Maybe a Khalil Herbert, I think, is what I'd comp him to. You're like, man, if this guy caught passes, he could really be something. But instead, he's pigeonholed into like a 1-2 downs role where he caps out at 14 or 15 touches a game. But if you're electric and you're playing alongside Jaden Daniels, who commands so much attention, I think you should be one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. Maybe you won't average 8 yards a carry every single game. That's a high bar for him to hit. He's not going to. But in the same way, like I said about Chubb, you do have to rank him as a gentleman's flex, even if the floor is understandably low on a guy who we just saw get, quote, only, we said it was 10 carries.
I would assume that is his absolute floor too. 10 carries, 33% of the snaps, where 10 to 12 feels like a good baseline. He could reach 18 to 20 carries some weeks, depending on game flow and just depending on how their confidence grows in him, because they clearly started out kind of small and he just passed every single test against the Giants. And they just wanted, that's what they wanted. They wanted increased efficiency on these early downs. They don't even want like a superstar, but they were tired of Brian Robinson only getting 3 to 4 carries. They want someone who's going to pop more 6 to 7 yard carries. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt certainly appeared capable of that, where he started out in like that RB 36 to 44 range. I think now you can maybe say more RB 32 to 36. He's inching upward. There could be 1 step forward, 2 steps back, maybe sometime soon. But just the cautious optimism just keeps maintaining on JCM, basically, where we never let our expectations get too high. They're modest, but he's meeting them, and they could get higher. So Germs wondering, sell Trey McBride and ride with Tyler Warren for the rest of the season. I don't think either one of us would expect Tyler Warren to outpoint Trey McBride as impressive as Tyler Warren was yesterday. But if you think Trey McBride has more trade value, would you be comfortable riding with Tyler Warren as an every week starter tight end? We're ranking him as an every week tight end 1. We know that. Just how comfortable are you kind of like setting and forgetting Tyler Warren in your tight end spot, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you framed it is good. Like, obviously, I still expect tight end top 3 type performances from Trey McBride, but unless you're flexing one of these guys, and you probably shouldn't be flexing a tight end, given that there is a trade market. You can extract value from these things. You should, in the long run, be looking to sell one of these guys. And I kind of agree with you that I could see the answer being Trey McBride. I think the big hangup for almost every rookie tight end, it's almost universal, is that their teams just do not let them play a lot. It's a hard position to make the transition from for a number of reasons. And most of the time they come out and they look like Dalton Kincaid, where he's fine on a per route basis, but he's just a part-time player, and that's untenable. That was simply not the case for Tyler Warren. They treated him truly just like any other veteran who is also really good. And like I said with Harold Fannin, he and Harold Fannin tied for the most catches by a rookie tight end in their first game ever. I don't think he'll reach the highs of Trey McBride, but you can also not get the same return on the trade market that you can for Trey McBride. So I probably would be looking to, trade one of them for sure, see what offers you can get. But my guess is the value you can get from selling a McBride versus selling a Warren, and what you get if you keep the other tight end, is probably better to trade Trey McBride.
It's probably better to trade Trey McBride. I guess you could also say it's possible Tyler Warren will never be more valuable than he is at this exact moment. After he comes out, has a great game, had been hyped all summer, has a great game. I mean, it was an amazing performance by the Colts, but we know valleys are coming to that peak yesterday. Like, we just absolutely for certain know valleys are coming with Daniel Jones. So you could look at it from that perspective, but if you want to maximize trade return, even if Tyler Warren's at his most valuable, you would have to assume Trey McBride still has far more trade value. We found Denny's burner account here. Cris was wondering about Alec Ayumanor. Saw 7 targets against the best defense in the league. Was totally just like setting air yards records, Kyle. Alec Ayumanor looked like a really dysfunctional Titans offense, though. Are we getting any excitement right now about Alec Ayumanor as a potential like MVS wide receiver 4 style player?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like maybe if you run really good, you can get the Rashid Shaheed, like wide receiver 3 in ranking, and he's either a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 8, like truly just no in between. He could be that, though. I mean, as Cris points out, saw 7 targets. He finished Monday Night Football pending 10th in total air yards. Should have had one catch where he goes up for it. His elbow hits the ground. That is a catch. If a I believe it's non-foot or hand body part hits the ground, instant auto catch, as long as you obviously maintain possession. Brian Callahan just doesn't know that rule and doesn't challenge it. Like, of course, it's not like that would have made the difference from him being a good fantasy asset or not, but at least would have helped his box score a little bit. I think he's worth an ad, but the fact that the Titans do look so dysfunctional, and he is not their number one receiver, and he's probably not overtaking Calvin Ridley this year. Ridley's good. He's not. Hey, look, if you think he is, I'm on board with that because I really like that.
That was not an Alec Ayumaner tweet from me just now. That was a Calvin Ridley tweet. Where I don't know, man, maybe anyone could surpass Calvin Ridley at this point. Who,
for me, it would be an Ayumaner tweet.
Calvin Ridley has become the bank examiner's wingman.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Ayumaner coming out of college too. Just did really have a strong analytics profile. And to be fair, some of the hangups in his profile were that like he probably is just a jump ball outside specialist. It kind of looked like the air yards never actually get to buy low jump ball specialist MVS type in week 1. But some guys execute on that really well. Like Nico Collins started his career kind of like that and then blossomed into he can just win 15 to 20 yards downfield so easily relative to the rest of the league. It's a skill set that very few players can do right now because of the way the league's playing football. It will take time for Ayumaner, if he ever does, to grow into that. But like you said, as far as number one receivers go, it's not the largest barrier to climb to have Calvin Ridley as that guy. I think he's more of a deep league ad, but I mean, he's on the radar.
I'm in 14-team leagues where I'm rostering Alec Ayumaner. He's
yeah.
fairly borderline in 12 right now, but every league is different. Some leagues are a lot deeper than others. If Alec Ayumaner is on your roster, like we wouldn't be like scanning your team like, dude, you gotta drop Alec. Like he's fine to have at the end of your roster. Calvin Austin, Brill, I can't ever pronounce this guy's name. He's here a lot though. We appreciate your questions.
Is it belligerent?
Brill, yeah, I can't say that. I can't say the word, but I can't say it. He's wondering, is Calvin Austin addable this week? Calvin had a little late summer hype. Had a pretty decent game in what was this, quote, surprising shootout of week 1. How are we feeling about Calvin Austin on the waiver wire, Kyle?
I mean, I wrote him up as an ad. It's kind of a good setup for him in that the Steelers' base package for passing was 12 personnel, which doesn't sound that fun, but as a wide receiver, it means you're competing with Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth for targets instead of another wide receiver. Just the fewer wide receivers on the field, the easier it is for the small number of them to actually earn targets. It's just going to essentially artificially boost your targets per route. But he also played almost all of the 12 personnel snaps. And of course, that means he's going to play all the 11 as well. He ran a route on something like 80-something% of Aaron Rodgers' dropbacks. That is just a full-time wide receiver role in a spot where he's going to be able to earn targets. He went toe-to-toe with DK Metcalf in terms of earning targets. I think it was 7 apiece. Obviously, he gets there with a touchdown. And they're going to generally play slow. That's how Aaron Rodgers played. They had a negative 1% pass rate over expected, which frankly for Arthur Smith isn't even that bad. Of course, it took the little shootout that could to drag him there, but maybe gives me some hope that there's a middle ground between Arthur Smith wants to be the most run-heavy quarterback or run-heavy team in the NFL, and Aaron Rodgers just is an attempts or a quarterback stat kind of quarterback. They were last year. The Jets weren't even that good at passing. They were still one of the top teams in the league in just overall passing volume. All of that setup lets Calvin Austin sneak maybe into the wide receiver 4/5 range. And for some people, that is something you need. But the ceiling as a true season-long breakout is probably not even there compared to a guy like Ayumaner, who's probably not going to be on a great team passing the football, is probably going to take a while to truly find his calling in the NFL. But the talent ceiling is just higher with a guy like Ayumaner. But then the week 1, or I guess week 2 now, projection is going to be higher with someone like Hollywood Brown or Quentin Johnson or Kayshon Boutte. So he just falls in this middle ground of just okay as a start next week, but probably not going to be that much better as a start in week 15. You can add him. If you need a flex, you can add him. He's just meaningfully lower on the priority of waivers than really anyone we talked about.
There are 2 flavors of wide receiver 4. There's the big play-based guys like Alec Ayumaner, like Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the past. And then there's the Wan'Dale Robinson, like Pop Douglas, I hope he just gets 8 to 10 targets and catches 4 to 5. That's firmly what Calvin Austin is. That is probably his ceiling. But he could be a wide receiver 4, PPR gadfly, a nuisance. God, this friggin' guy started Calvin Austin against me and he got 11 points. This is bull bleep.
Fish get there again, man. The fish
exactly. I feel like that's Calvin Austin's role on your fantasy team. Many people are wondering about Kenneth Walker III's role on their fantasy team. Ram in is wondering thoughts on KW3, where I don't know, it looks like a benching, it smells like a benching. Kind of seemed like Zach Charbonnet was the RB1. We've been speculating on this show that could be the case for much of the second half of August. Is it too early to call it a takeover, Kyle? Really close competitive game. They were riding Zach Charbonnet would have mattered most. What are your thoughts on Kenneth Walker III, who could just end up a hellaciously bad RB2 pick if the usage we saw Sunday continues going forward?
Yeah, you were all over that. I was not really interested in Walker for like different reasons. I just didn't have the same high opinion of him as where drafters were. I didn't even think there was that much of a chance that he would get committed, let alone, like you said, smelled like a benching, looked like a benching. It was a benching. Maybe it isn't a benching that lasts. Maybe the game plan changes. Maybe they like what they saw from him. He was the worst running back in the NFL in rush yards over expected in week 1. It's a 1-game sample, but he cooked up nothing. So it's bad. It's all like, I think week 1 was maybe his floor. Maybe
it probably was his floor, but I mean, I kind of fear that Zach Charbonnet, I said this on our show last night, he really profiles as like the old school rhythm back where like, man, it's annoying. Like Zach Charbonnet had 7 or 8 carries in a row that went nowhere. But he's the classic. If you give him 20 carries, it's usually going to result in like 100 to 120 yards. He's going to pop enough big runs in there. And I sort of think they're starting to view him as like a rhythm-based starter. Kenneth Walker could be like, not that Zach Charbonnet is not a power runner, but that Kenneth Walker could be like a powerful change of pace complement. Week 1's just the ultimate red herring week. It's an outlier week. A lot of this could look foolish in retrospect. It just kind of looks like to me, there were already signs that was happening in Seattle. Then it did happen. I am very concerned if you drafted Kenneth Walker III as your RB2. We're like, how do you rank him as an RB2 this week? Like you really can't.
No chance.
You really can't do it. Some people might sunk cost stick with it. Again, 1 game is 1 game. But I mean, I don't know how you. This is far too dramatic of a phrase, but I don't know how you, in good conscience, could rank.
I don't know how you live with yourself if you.
Yeah, how could you rank?
How do you kiss your kids on the forehead good bed at night and rank Ken Walker as an RB2?
I do not know. So Kenneth Walker is someone we'll be talking about and writing about a lot more on this website this week. Greg McDonald, he wants us to establish the fab line for Hollywood Brown, who he said is the wide receiver ad of the week. Greg had Xavier Worthy, so the need is probably particularly acute for him. It was 20% too high. What are you saying with Hollywood Brown, Kyle?
I had another 30% written down. I like 16 targets, man. That is disgusting. But it is also literally the most targets anyone saw in week 1. We'll see what Justin Jefferson can do tonight, but it's going to be at least 2 or 3. And like I said, I think maybe the more concerning part for the team, but sadly encouraging part for Hollywood, is that Travis Kelce was just nowhere to be found. Obviously, he broke the long touchdown. He got behind the defense for like a 40-something yard touchdown. He saw 4 targets. He saw a quarter of the targets as Hollywood Brown. He saw, like I said, he saw fewer targets than Juju Smith-Schuster. He's done, man. Like, it does not look like he has anything left in the tank. Last year, he was at least able to scrape by as a tight end 1 PPR because they did still find ways to feed him the football, even if the efficiency just kept dropping. I don't even know if they can do that anymore, at which point you do just get tons of targets for Hollywood Brown. Low value targets because they're going to be generally low ADOT. He's not going to do a ton with them. He's going to love dropping them. Targets are targets. As long as you play in PPR, the guy who just saw 16 targets is someone who, especially when you have the acute need. If I'm not starting Hollywood Brown in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not spending a lot on him at all because I do think this goes to 0 at some point. Rashee Rice comes back. Xavier Worthy hopefully comes back. Hopefully he comes back is all I can say, I guess. Rashee Rice is for sure coming back week 7 unless they have an early bye that I'm forgetting. At that point, he's not a target dominator. There's no doubt about that. And maybe Travis Kelce, they can find ways to get him involved. Maybe it goes to 0 even quicker. But right now, you're going to be ranking him as a wide receiver 2. And assuming, in this case, you have Worthy, you really do need a wide receiver 2 on your roster. So I'll say maybe 25 to 30%.
And yet you have to, fortunately in fantasy football, you need to mostly think short term. Like it'd be nice to think in like a 2-month window, 2-month increments. Mm-hmm. Like if you lost Xavier Worthy, you got to get through this month. And so he just means a lot to your team right now. Hollywood Brown. And I think even the full house Chiefs receiver core, he could still maintain in like that wide receiver 36 to 44 range. Because I mean, the Chiefs, Mahomes was looking downfield more. He was running more. I think he wants it to be a more explosive offense again, finally. One game, of course. But I don't think – it's not like I think Hollywood Brown will be useless when those guys come back. Hollywood Brown could, of course, be hurt by then. Is the main problem with Hollywood Brown. But I agree with everything you just said. Zaza Pachulia wondering, is Isaac Guerrero droppable? He didn't do anything yesterday. I did add him like ahead of week one. Like I was trying to like pull one over on some of my deeper league mates. He didn't do anything. I don't think he even got a touch. So we're just cutting him loose immediately, Kyle.
Yeah, he's just a non-playing football RB3. Cut him loose.
Let's see here. Now, okay, I'm hunting for a question. Garrett Wilson or Travis Hunter, rest of season PPR. I think it's very safe to say I'll be starting Garrett Wilson over Travis Hunter every week going forward. I mean, I guess that's could change, but what do you think of Travis Hunter's usage? I mean, led the Jaguars in targets, but at 8. He only turned them into 6 catches for 33 yards. It was a very, very weird game. That's what I'm going to tell everyone about the Jaguars in week 1, where you had the lengthy weather delay in the first half. It's 20-3 at halftime. At no point did it appear the Carolina Panthers could win this game. So just kind of like inconclusive Travis Hunter usage. Definitely starting Garrett Wilson over him. But what do you think? What's the Travis Hunter party line right now heading into week 2, Kyle?
I mean, he out-targeted Brian Thomas in his first career game. Like you said, it was a weird game. I think maybe the most operative point there is that, like, that Panthers team was never going to push them. Almost from the jump, it was like, you don't need to score a lot of points to beat this Panthers team. Hopefully that changes. Like, I want T-Mac to be a good player. I want Chuba to be this exciting young running back. I want Bryce Young to be good, but he wasn't, and maybe he's just not. In different game scripts, in different non-weather delayed, awful weather kinds of games, I do think the passing attack hopefully looks better. The fact that he comes out and sees a bunch of targets, even if some of them were schemed, like they're trying to get him involved early, is good. With that being said, though, this was not a question. It's Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. This one's definitely Garrett Wilson. And we'll save Travis Hunter too. And Travis Etienne, all the stuff, interesting stuff that was going on with the Jaguars in week 1. We'll get a much more maybe like revealing look into how things are going to appear going forward in week 2 against the Bengals, where, I mean, I was about to say there's almost no way this game won't be a shootout. I guess famous last words considering how truly terrible the Bengals appeared yesterday, but that's just their thing. That's just what they do in week 1, expecting a shootout between the Jaguars and Bengals, and much more interesting data points on our mystery Jags. Heading into week 2, Ginger Fro Ninja is wondering about trading Bill, JCM as he's known, for Omarion Hampton. I'm assuming you're still vastly preferring Omarion Hampton in this arrangement. Correct, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, Omarion Hampton was a workhorse. He saw, I think, every single touch or every single carry except for one, saw every single catch except for one out of the backfield.
Bad, though. But he was bad at that.
Look, worst case scenario, he's bad and he gets all the work. Best case scenario, he's good and he gets all the work. I like my odds. That's all I've got.
Yeah. This one, you're still – Omarion Hampton, the usage was bulletproof in week 1. Hopefully his first game gender. He looked kind of big and slow, I'll say. But I was a little concerned about that. But one game and nothing to panic about. It was ultimately very good usage. So just take it week to week with the rookie. CeeLo is wondering, what is our concern level for Nico Collins delivering on ADP, just given how truly terrible that Texans offensive line was? So one thing I'll say, the Texans right now are just kind of a slappy team. Like the Texans aren't going to really outcoach anybody, and the Rams always outcoach everyone. So I don't know if the Texans will appear to be quite as big of a mess in week 2 against the against the Bucs as they were yesterday against the Rams. That's probably something of a low point for the Texans, but you just did not want to see that game after what we saw in 2024. Are you concerned about Nico Collins? Like his next gen stats route tree is kind of going viral this morning for how bad it looks. Are you concerned at all about Nico Collins?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am concerned. The big issue, we talked about this, the big issue for the Texans was their offensive line is terrible, and CJ Stroud does not do his best work under pressure. No one does, but he disproportionately suffers from that more than anyone. And especially for the types of routes Collins is running, he's a big, fast dude, but they're long developing routes. Like he's a type of player who I would assume his production goes up not linearly, but like exponentially as your quarterback has more time in the pocket to find you open 20 yards downfield. Like I said, his skill set revolves around being open deep downfield. Those plays don't just happen instantly, though. But Texans plays do have to happen instantly because they're either sacks if they aren't, or they're checkdowns. Like if they're, quote, successful, as successful as checkdown can be. this is not the best setup for Nico. If we were redrafting, though, you do have to put it in context. It's 1 week. And like the Texans O-line wasn't good 3 seasons ago, 2 seasons and 1 game ago, whenever Nico Collins absolutely erupted. And frankly, Nico Collins on a per game basis was an absolute monster last year too. And the line was terrible. The line has probably gotten worse, frankly, but it was not a setup that you would think is great for Nico either. And he still exceeded the expectations and was a per game wide receiver 1. He just missed some time. Yeah. That being said, like, where would we redraft him? Like, maybe I'd shuffle some of the wide receivers around behind him. Like, I would no longer be afraid to take, like, I was never really that afraid, but like Puka is going over him. But also, like, the guys behind him, like St. Brown, the Lions look terrible. Brian Thomas got out targeted by Travis Hunter. Devon Achane, like, that team is dead on arrival, completely dead on arrival team. Genty, you talk about running backs a little large and slow, maybe not the best performance. Like, who are you taking ahead of him that you weren't already? For me, the only change could be like Puka. If you weren't, I was.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Collins is just to me the concern just remains injury with Nico Collins. Like, hopefully he does not injure his calf. Hopefully he's not injure his hamstring. There will be stink bomb weeks like this because that's apparently just the nature of this Texans team. Ultimately, not worried about Nico Collins getting you your numbers. You talked to Dylan Sampson as an ad. Quinshon Judkins seeming like he's going to be here for week 2. Is Jerry Jerome Ford already a drop heading into week 2, Kyle?
Yeah, 100%. He got doubled up in carries by Dylan Sampson, and that was before Quinshon Judkins joined the team. Total drop.
What's the status of Drake London? The status that he's day-to-day with the shoulder. We'll keep that one updated all week on Rotoworld.com. Just joining chat. Is Pacheco hurt, or was Pacheco just really bad? Brandon S. wondering, is Pacheco done, Kyle?
Yeah, not hurt that I know of, unless something has happened recently. No, I'm assuming they're talking about the fact that I believe he got like literally 5 carries, and so did Kareem Hunt. And as I said before, Kareem Hunt played on all the snaps that matter, a bunch of the snaps you could actually score fantasy points on. Of course, he didn't actually score fantasy points on those. Maybe the argument for Isaiah Pacheco is that he can play his way into consuming the Kareem Hunt role. But to Kareem Hunt's credit, even last year, as he was like generally dreadfully inefficient, he was a decent success rate runner. He is a good 1 to 2 yard hammer. He's really not good at almost anything else, but he's not bad at converting 2 yard 2nd and 2s to 1st and 10s on the next play and then leave the field because you're not doing a ton on 1st and 10. And Pacheco's, even if he is not ever going to return to his pre-injury form, is going to be better at those things. But if they both have these specialized roles, Pacheco's is a true between the 20s, 1st and 2nd down role on a team that is still going to pass a ton. It's looking very over for him.
Free Brashard Smith. Over's a bit strong.
There's no.
They're literally in friggin' Brazil. Like, I don't know. Like it's not a real game. Like, let's just be real. It's not a real game.
Yeah. He's not living up to ADP. He's not even sniffing it.
No, I mean, I do agree with that. Where I think too, the Chiefs, they might have decided they maxed Pacheco out. When they tried to give him a bigger role, he just inevitably got hurt. He would inevitably get hurt again because the way he runs. That maybe he's more of like a pick your spots power back, kind of between the 20s. Like you said, not looking great for Isaiah Pacheco. Elia, who's here every week, it's not a question, it's just a comment. The dude being Omarion Hampton ran out of bounds. Credit
to Jim Harbaugh. He comes out and immediately says, like, that was not his fault. We didn't prepare him for that, which is something we harp on all the time. Dude, you cannot be asking players to do like win probability with X clock left. Yeah. And is it running or not? You cannot be asked them to run those types of numbers in their head mid-play. If a coach tells them obviously go down for the goal line and they don't do it, that is a big issue. And maybe Jim Harbaugh is just doing what good coaches do and not publicly lambasting his players, even if they did tell him beforehand, like, you can't go out of bounds. You need the clock to keep going, and he just takes it on because he's a good coach who like protects his players in that capacity. But taking him at face value, I don't think that. Jim Harbaugh doesn't think it's his fault. They didn't tell him beforehand that he needed to. So let me
be clear, it was his fault. But because you learn that on Madden at the age of 7 years old.
No. We say I forget when we had this conversation last year where you're like, you cannot have players making these decisions. Like, football is a fast and violent game. You do not need to doing win probability calculations while you're running 20 yards.
It is impossible. Belligerent, he's back. He's wondering what in the world is he doing with all this Tyreek Hill stock. I mean, listen, even the Dolphins, you really have to abide by the 1 game principle. Maybe it was just the Colts. You do. Maybe the Colts are just running like astoundingly pure. They play the Patriots this week. I wrote this in the Sunday Aftermath. You don't want like your last stand game to already be in week 2. but it's like a last stand game already for the Dolphins. The Patriots looked really bad against the Raiders. The Dolphins have to win this game. How fearful are you of you took Tyreek Hill in the wide receiver 1-2 borderline. How fearful are you for that after one game?
Yeah, it's over. Like, it's totally over. His decline from 2023 to 2024 was the largest decline by yards per route run in the route tracking PFF era. No one has ever more sharply fallen off. And to his credit, that's because it started at a place that few other wide receivers have ever gotten to. But when you just look at players who drop off like that, there is almost never a return. You are much closer to being out of the league than you are to being back to your superstar status. And then he goes out and he's on the sidelines throwing a tantrum, literally quit on the team in week 18 last year. And we know his coach is getting fired. You are right that this is a last stand game in week 2. Like, what do you do with all your Tyreek Hill stock? Do what other countries do when they have insane inflation. Use the money as firewood. It is over.
Oh my God. Wow. All right. So Kyle is saying the continental currency, I'm reading a book on the Revolutionary War, that we just refuse to stop printing and basically becomes fire kindling. You're saying that's the same thing.
You get the reference perfectly.
Well, I do get the reference perfectly. Raman is wondering what to do with RJ Harvey. Yeah, inconclusive first week. Would have looked pretty bad if not for a late 50-yard run. Thoughts on RJ Harvey and his usage? The J.K. Dobbins hype, unfortunately, came to fruition. He easily led in carries and touches. But RJ Harvey contributes the big run. What are our thoughts after one game?
It's a hold, but he's probably even a little less startable after seeing him get thoroughly out-carried by J.K. Dobbins. And maybe more importantly, more frustratingly, that Tyler Bidet goes out and sees like 5 or 6 targets. They clearly have a role for him. And that's the killer. It's one that I don't think holds. I just cannot imagine you draft RJ Harvey to play Tyler Bidet in the role that would make sense for RJ Harvey. But we do need to see that change before he's really playable. Just the touch total, I believe it was like 6 or 7. Like you said, he gets the 50-yard carry. You're not getting 50-yard carries every game. Even he got the 50-yard carry. What if we did? What if it worked for us? You're not getting the 50-yard carry every game. And even if you did, you got like 7 points from whatever. So the fact that he looks awesome, love it. Very excited for that. The fact that he saw no touches means that in the short term, he is largely not playable.
Just a few minutes left. We have a few trade questions here. Austin Tanner is wondering which running back would we flip out of Bucky Irving, Omarion Hampton, James Conner, or Bill? Who he apparently wants to trade one of them. Who, for whatever reason, who would you want to trade the most?
I'll start with least Irving, second least Hampton. I think Conner possibly the most. Like, he meaningfully split work with Trey Benson. He still out-carried him. But if it is a true committee, which I didn't really think there was much of a chance of that being the case going into the season, but if that is the case and it's a true committee, like, he's just any other committee back. He's good. Like, I still think he's good at football, but I think you will be able to, if he is a committee back, sell him as a workhorse for another week or two. And I would also consider selling Bill, because we talked about it earlier. He's just not catching passes, and he's just a between the tackles runner. He's very exciting, but how that manifests in fantasy points is not as exciting.
Bill's the ultimate, like, the buy the book move in fantasy is to trade him now, where because it's like the classic. It could be anything, or it could be a rock, or whatever that thing. Like
a boat.
Yeah, a boat. That's right. Or like, the pretty good chance he could get more valuable. There's a pretty good chance he'll never be more valuable than he is right now. That's always the ultimate sell high principle in fantasy. Like, if you think this player is never going to be more valuable, you trade them. And again, he could get more valuable, but there's just a reasonable chance that Bill will never be more valuable than he is right now. So in that context, he's a classic sell high. We had another question, Drewski, wondering, speaking of trading Bill, would you trade Bill for Ridley? He has Chase Brown and Bijan Robinson. Apparently needs receiver help. Again, the bank examiner's best friend, Calvin Ridley. This is a very fair trade, though, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt for Calvin Ridley. Which side of it would you rather have?
I mean, unless you really need wide receiver, I just don't see what, like, Calvin Ridley is doing for you. I guess, like, this is coming from someone who didn't draft much Calvin Ridley. So I'm like, this guy's useless. Who cares? But, like, he is just a clear bet on, like, sustaining the status quo as a wide receiver 2/3. While I guess it sounds like I am maybe a little pessimistic on JCM as a fantasy asset. You outlined it. There could be points in the season in which he just is the entirety of their carries. He's a guy they feel comfortable relying on 15 or 20 times in a game, and he might be special. I think those odds are slim, and that's why I think he's maybe a sell high candidate. But the odds of that guy, of Calvin Ridley being like, oh man, he was the playoff hammer, right? He's the guy who just back to back weeks crushed in the fantasy playoffs, or he's the guy who got you there. He had 2 good games to get you to the fantasy playoffs. Like, I just don't think Calvin Ridley is really that guy. And I think there's a small chance JCM is that guy. So for that reason, I'd probably shoot a little higher than Calvin Ridley, unless you are just, maybe you're the guy who lost Worthy and you really do need it. At that point, I think it becomes a fair trade.
I don't know. Ridley could be. I think a lot of people are skeptical of Ja'Cory Krosky merit, and that Ridley would maybe be like a borderline top 30 receiver. I think in a vacuum is a pretty solid return for Ja'Cory Krosky merit, but I also very much understand the argument against it. We're almost done. Let me see here. Quincy was wondering. No, sorry, that was Elia. Hey, Elia, again. He's saying buy low on Calvin Ridley, Titans onward. Quincy, would you trade Derrick Henry for Jamar Chase? He has T. Higgins. Big names involved in this trade. I always say, just with these deals, like, who's the best player in the deal? It's a little hard to say who the best player in this deal is. Would you rather have Derrick Henry? Would you rather have Jamar Chase in a vacuum?
It's very clearly Jamar Chase. Like, look, Derrick Henry's awesome.
I'm not sure I would say very clearly.
What were you drafting Derrick Henry at the 102?
It's very clearly Jamar Chase.
Look, I get my teeth kicked in by Derrick Henry every year. I am wildly familiar with his game. But like what Jamar Chase did last year would have been in full PPR, would have been Derrick Henry's best season, like across the board. That's just like the nature of the number 1 overall wide receiver by a wide margin is going to do that. I mean, if you have a reason to think that he's not going to be that guy this year, then maybe it becomes closer, right? But just look at where we were drafting them. Like, it was Chase as the clear 101, and Derrick Henry is like back into the first round. In best ball, he's going more in that second round. He obviously is a like very good football player, but when you hit on Jamar Chase, you win your league. Even when you hit on Derrick Henry, he does not outscore Saquon Barkley. He does not outscore Christian McCaffrey. That's just the nature of the game we play.
Well, he's going to be outscoring them for a while, seeing how he started off his season.
It'll take a few weeks for them.
Hey,
full PPR, McCaffrey, scammy 10 catches to get him there.
We wouldn't normally answer this kind of question, but Kyle Siebert has been desperate for us to answer this. He's going into Monday Night Football. He's up 15. He has the Bears defense he's facing. Justin Jefferson. Is he going to hang on? I feel like the answer is probably no. But is he
really? I would guess.
Well, I guess he's probably 63-47 to win.
Yeah.
No, excuse me, 37. I can do math. I swear to God.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because you think the Justin Jefferson projection is probably like 18 or 19 points. That's typically what you expect.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, not
so
20.
he only needs he only needs the Bears to cover 4 or 5 points in that scenario. And most defense probably project for like 6 or whatever. So yeah, I'll go same number as you, 63.
63-40. I think you're going to win. We'll revisit this prediction on Tuesday when I'm back with Denny Carter, because unfortunately this show's over. But thank you so much for your participation. Lots of really great questions. We hope we answered them. If we did not answer them in this chat, we're trying to answer them in our waiver wire article, in the Sunday Aftermath, and the regression files for Denny Carter on our podcast Tuesday with Denny, when we preview all of week 2 on Thursday with myself, Kyle, and Denny. We hope week 1 has been going well for you. If not, we hope week 2 is better. So for Kyle Dvorchak and Patrick Daugherty, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with you all week long on rotoworld.com.